10 minutes late because of some technical issues that had popped up. We're down to one camera, folks, here at WATV in Woodstock. So if all of you people out there in TV land watching appreciate original content coming out of your community TV station, you might want to let the powers that be, our town board, know that we need some maintenance here. We're suffering through a steady deterioration of some of our critical equipment anyway. So I like to thank the venue as it is, and Paula Gloria Barton for teching for me as always. And we have a variety of topics to cover tonight. The piece that we were just watching was some video content Paula had obtained with the establishing of a new service over on her building, electric service with Central Hudson. And the issue at hand is the difference between analog meters and the digital meters. And there seems to be some corporate language saying that digital meters aren't smart meters and they're safe. By whatever measure safe they're talking, I'm not sure, but that's always a point to look into. And I have some research under my belt with the safety of various microwave frequencies, and that information came to me through an older woman named Helen, I can't remember her last name, who was the personal secretary to Colonel Thomas Bearden. And he's quite well known in military circles for his research through the 1970s and 80s on Russian scalar technology, which now scalar technology is frequency manipulations, microwave manipulations in the atmosphere with various broadcast tools for a variety of purposes. Some of them could be weather modification, some of them could be reconnaissance and things of this nature, military applications. Microwave frequency technology is used all the time now to an unprecedented level that is really new to our species, at least within the last several thousand years that we know about. You know, as I'm a bit of an amateur historian and archaeologist and anthropologist on a purely recreational level, you could say, an interest of mine. I know from the research I've been looking at that we don't know. We don't know our history as a species. We don't know what we've accomplished in the great time of antiquity. And we really don't know much about what's happened recently because it's, of course, history is always written by the victors and not the losers. So, you know, our real history is a journey to really get a good handle on really anything to do with the human being and the human experience. So these frequencies that I was reading Colonel Bearden's original manuscript in his report to the military, naval intelligence, I believe, if I remember correctly, had a section on radiation. And in some of that material, the Navy did extensive research on microwave radiation that is part of the functioning of their ships and submarines. the nuclear-powered submarines, for example, have conduits of a variety of material. It could be the cooling conduits. It could be energy conduits, for servicing the electrical needs of the craft. And in either scenario, there are electromagnetic waves and frequencies and radiation. Electromagnetic radiation might be another way to phrase it. That the Navy made an extensive study on the health effects on human beings because they have human beings operating these craft. And what they found was these frequencies have a multitude of ranges, and some of these frequency ranges are very aggressive and toxic to living tissue, human tissue, nervous system, flesh and bone. All of it is subject to these microwave frequencies and radiation that penetrates right through your body. So the only real shielding that works besides a lead wall is distance. Unfortunately, when you are on a ship, or specifically a submarine, you don't have the benefit of distance to distance yourself from a lot of these components that are radiating this energy. What they found also, though, in their research of a variety of frequency ranges, is that some frequency ranges, perfectly viable to use to communications and such, these frequency ranges are non-toxic to living tissue and human beings. And this raises my conspiratorial flag, that perhaps these microwave technologies are being used in such a broad spectrum because of the sheer numbers of people now participating with things like iPhones and cell phones and computers and laptops and even your Wi-Fi phone, regular telephone at home, microwave ovens. All of these devices have to operate on a different frequency. Otherwise, your remote controller will open up the neighbor's garage door, or your phone call from your specific frequency. You can look at it this way: your phone number has been assigned a frequency. So when you're calling somebody else's phone, though that packet of information going through the airwaves has to then integrate with that person's specific frequency. And when you multiply all of this action by, let's just say, 1 billion people, then we're talking some billion frequencies. And they have to, what they do is they modulate the radio waves so that they can get a maximum number of data points or data packets to interact, to communicate, so that you can have these two-way conversations, texting and all that comes with it, without interfering with other people's communications. So it's an incredibly complex affair. So it would stand to reason that the range, the bandwidth, or the range of frequencies that are available, theoretically infinite, but they are useful to us, would theoretically include some of these toxic ranges, some of these particular frequency ranges that are really probably best to avoid altogether. a lot of research out there. I'm not astute enough off the cuff to quote studies and this kind of thing, but there is a great interest in GWEN towers, and what GWEN stands for, I'm not sure. It's GWEN towers, and the cell phone towers. A great deal of controversy about the frequency and microwave radiation coming off of these devices being dangerous to birds, wildlife, animals that live in close proximity, as well as humans living in close proximity to these cell towers. But then there's also, more close to home, your meter for monitoring your electric service so that you can get billed every month for that electric service. These digital meters, sometimes they're called smart meters. Central Hudson says there is a differentiation that in New York State there's no smart meters, and smart meters are a whole other thing, and that digital meters are safe. And this is part of the contest and controversy, is that if these digital meters are broadcasting, they're broadcasting microwave energy, and that microwave energy is potentially and probably, and to some studies, which I can't quote right now, suggest strongly that these are toxic to the nervous systems and health of human beings. So that's part of the conundrum that we have as a technological society is it safe? Is it safe what we're doing with microwave energy? And how do we best remedy the situation when you object to these smart meters, also known or digital meters, being surreptitiously installed on your home without your knowledge or consent? And if it is a provable fact that the microwave frequencies being broadcast, I don't know if it's every 2 minutes or every 5 minutes, there's a pulse that comes off these devices, which is quite strong, so that the meter reader can just drive by and point his device and have an intercommunication with the meter on your home. And it would stand to reason that these devices are going 24/7 because these guys are driving around all the time taking their readings when it's that time of the month. So these your meter's got PMS. Yes. And there you have it, that you in your own home are in close proximity to these bursts every minute, every 2 minutes. I'm not sure what the duration of the burst is. It could be 20 seconds a burst, but it's a long enough burst, and each burst of energy that comes off as a radio communication, whether it's being read or not, is a microwave pollution, you could say. It has an impact on the living tissue walking around as human beings or pets and animals. Later this evening, there'll probably be some follow-up on this particular topic. I just would like to, share a little bit of what I learned about microwave energy to follow up the introduction tonight, which was coincidental and while we worked out our technical problems. And moving right along, I had a couple of people lined up for tonight, but for various reasons that didn't happen. And I thought, well, gee, what could I share in an hour? And I thought, well, okay, I have my my super soap, my space age detergent that I am a semi-manufacturer in Woodstock, and presently it's not for sale. I do demonstrations So this is not an advertisement for sales, just to be clear. What it is I'm educating our viewing community the power of water when it has been energized with common detergent feedstock materials that were compounded in a proprietary way. Yep, I was just going to say that, proprietary way, that changes the chemistry of water so that water is wetter and it becomes truly the universal solvent. The idea here is that the technical classification for the detergent is a surfactant. It is a surfactant/detergent. And I stumbled into this product, I'd say 1981. I went to an open house by a good friend of mine, and this is where I met him, Andrew Nixon, in West Cornwall, Connecticut, who was introducing the formula. At that time, he was representing it and wanted to share with anybody who'd listen an odd little product that he found that made oil, petroleum oil, and all of its derivatives water soluble. Now, I have, since 1982, when I really started working with the product in depth, that many years, 82 to 2016, how many years is that?
Almost 40, 35 years, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've been working with this chemistry and I've made discoveries with it. I can take a solution of oil and water and freeze it and precipitate carbon from the hydrocarbon chain so that it looks like it just comes right out of the water and settles on the bottom after it thaws. But while it is frozen, hydrogen is released. And this is a form of hydrogen production, which is also a stabilized hydrogen. So you can manipulate the hydrogen safely. And that's in industrial terms a very valuable thing, because hydrogen by itself is very unstable. When it comes in contact with oxygen, it makes water, but in the process it explodes. That's what happens in your internal combustion engine in your car. Through my journey of learning about surfactants, water, petroleum cycles, and fuel, and the burning of fuel in your internal combustion engine, gasoline, diesel fuel, it's all the same. And when it burns, it's turning the hydrocarbons into several byproducts. You'll have carbon ash out of your tailpipe, which is very minimal compared to the production of water. So for every gallon of gasoline, and this is not exact, this is a rough estimate here. The real formula would probably I'd have to look that up, but approximately for every gallon of gasoline you burn in your car, out your tailpipe is coming 60% of a gallon of water. The rest is carbon and any other particulates or compounds that might be residuals of the burning process from whatever is in the fuel. Because fuels have additives, they put in detergents. They used to actually add lead, and now they, in the 1970s, they had to remove the lead because there was so much lead in the atmosphere that it was causing lead poisoning in the general population, and animals as well.
Why did they add it in the first place?
Because early on, the functioning of the valve train in earlier motors, prior to the 1970s, especially, when you go back to the 1930s and 20s, the real earlier motors, they required lead so that the valve train wouldn't bash itself to bits.
Lubrication?
Is a form of lubrication, in a way, yeah, I guess. It sort of cushions,
Yeah.
it creates a film of lead would create enough of a resistance in the valve train to keep them from chipping themselves apart.
Yeah.
That's my understanding, and again, if there's an inaccuracy there, it's unintended.
There's an inaccuracy called 679-7777.
Sure, you can pipe in anytime, 679-7777.
To put you on air.
And so when I met Andrew and we talked about the import of a water-based degreaser, which is what he was introducing, this brought to me a memory of a conversation with my father, the Colonel Conant, my dad, who in 1979, maybe less than 2 years before this meeting with Andrew, gave me a lesson in industry, and that was that as early as the 1920s, the big motor companies, the big industrial powers they knew then how toxic benzene is. Benzene is pretty much the original word for gasoline. They knew how toxic diesel fuel is. They knew how toxic petroleum products are and were. And it's quite alarming, with the birth of the petroleum age, when oil was discovered to have many more uses in the 1860s through the 1870s, they were cracking to make a replacement, cracking the petroleum into different components to make a replacement for whale oil. And this is another odd little fact that people tend not to glean about petroleum, is it hasn't been all bad. And I'm not a shill for the petroleum, I'm an environmentalist, I'm not a shill for the petroleum corporations.
Oh, that's what they all say.
But there is this interesting fact that whales were hunted nearly to extinction. Many species of whales were hunted nearly to extinction because our growing world civilization was thirsty for lamp oil. And the development of a fine grade crude oil to replace it is what we call kerosene. And in the production of kerosene, there was this byproduct in the 1880s, 1890s, called benzene, which is a form of gasoline. Very explosive, great degreaser, but they didn't know what to do with it. So for a few decades there, before it became a viable fuel, the millions of gallons of benzene were simply dumped into rivers in this period. Yeah. In the meantime, during this technological transition, the whales got a break. And our whales are coming back, and you can go take whale watching tours and see them.
What about perfume? I always thought whales were hunted for perfume.
Ambergris. And actually, ambergris is a form of whale snot.
Oh.
So I understand it. Yeah, and it is an
Excretion?
Yeah. I don't know if it comes out their ears or their blowhole, but occasionally it washes up, and ambergris can be found on the shorelines. Is one way to find ambergris. To kill a whale for ambergris is pretty criminal, because you can't really get a whole lot of it, for that much of a whale. But that's why it's such a precious commodity in perfume making. And they've synthesized ambergris largely from petroleum products. So petroleum has been with us for thousands of years, and its many uses are not all bad. It's really the incorrect disposal of it. So getting back to dear old Dad telling me about petroleum and the big manufacturers, explained to me that every factory everywhere, and it doesn't matter what it's making, has to either degrease the object that it's tooling or the tools that they're making the object with. So they have to clean the equipment, they have to clean the between each process of manufacture, you have to clean the part that you're making. So here's the problem that they knew way back in the 1920s. You have the degreaser itself, and they got into the habit because it made the benzene such a good degreaser by adding a chlorine. So they compounded chlorine with benzene, and they made what today we call trichloroethylene. I'm going to have a sip of water.
On that note.
Tetrahydrochloride or trichloroethylene, or the broader group is the chlorinated biphenyls. That's another, that kind of covers a wide range of these degreasers. So you have a compound now that did not exist in nature. Trichloroethylene is so prevalent in our waterways. Another one is a high-temperature lubricant in transformers that the power companies use, and that would be, PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls. Okay, this is a related compound, but it's more of an oil, it's less of a degreaser. And because of it's compounded with chlorine, these biphenyl chlorinated oils are very rugged. They take a lot of heat, and they are used for keeping those transformers running safely and cool as the megawatts are coursing through them and being distributed to your neighborhood. Well, General Motors in Connecticut, not General Motors, General Electric in Connecticut and on the Hudson River had been dumping excess or used PCB into the waterways of the Hudson River and the Housatonic River. And I know a lot about these issues because I was involved in a lot of the protesting and resistance to these corporations not cleaning up the mess, and eventually dredging programs did get underway. But the biggest thing was simply stopping General Electric from putting the stuff in the rivers in the first place. And it turns out that the rivers are self-cleaning. More importantly, though, is this started a quest, as my father was telling me, to find a replacement for these chlorinated biphenyls, for these chlorinated benzenes, the trichloroethylene class of chemicals, because of their toxicity. In the manufacture of these products, in the use of these products, and then the abysmal practice of disposing of chlorinated biphenyls, we have created a environmental nightmare to such an extent that I learned from my Mohawk friends along the St. Lawrence River, turtles, snapping turtles, which are very sacred to them for a variety of symbolic reasons and historical ones, are so filled with PCB and trichloroethylene and other manufacturing chemicals that the turtles themselves are considered toxic waste. That's how toxic and contaminated the bio zone is along the banks of the St. Lawrence River. You have aluminum smelters up there. You have Alcoa. You have General Motors foundry there, aluminum foundry, and Alcoa. I don't know if I mentioned them already, but you have some incredible. Reynolds is up there, aluminum smelting going on, and automobile part manufacturing going on, engine blocks and things of this nature, which require an incredible amount of degreasers. So, Dad said this became a quest. All of industry was looking for that magic potion that would break oil down with water. And he said, if you found something like that, get on that elephant and don't ever get off. Because it represents the single largest market on the planet. Fully 1/3 of our planet's money supply is tied up in the production, use, and disposal of liquid hydrocarbon or chlorinated hydrocarbon degreasers. Very toxic, very expensive, and not a compound known to nature. So that's what I dropped on Andrew's head that day. I said, well, this is really funny that you're introducing me to a water-based degreaser because this is what Dad said. And that's what I had related to him. And it nearly knocked him over in his chair. And I said, this is how big this is. This is 1/3 of our entire planet's money supply is wrapped up in this stuff. Because every factory everywhere, whether it doesn't matter what it's making, the product it's making and the equipment that's making it, all has to be cleaned. It all has to be degreased. Automobile repair shops all over the world, they are using these kinds of products. Now, this good news is in the past 35 years, our parent company, my parent company, has made great inroads in getting their product out to the world, and it is a real success story on a lot of levels, but it's only in the realms of janitorial supply because it's a great cleaner, hard surface cleaner, non-toxic, biodegradable, 96% in 8 days upon exposure to the environment. The product itself goes away, and whatever it is that you are cleaning goes away. And where it goes away to is the elements. The chemistry is quite fascinating. The class of chemicals involved are really very simple compounds. Ammonia, alcohol. Let's see, ammonia, alcohol, and the third one is alkaline. I got one variety is the alkaline agent is sodium hydroxide, and the other product, the sister product, has potassium hydroxide in it. And the benzene, we'll go back to that, is actually ethylene oxide is in the manufacture of this very, very unique molecule. Ethylene oxide is used to precipitate and pull together the actual soap molecule. So this is a very, very space-age product, and it cleans anything, and non-toxically. This product knows not to harm living tissue, which is really remarkable. It almost has a sixth sense about it. And I was just going to get to that. Part of what makes it interesting is that the product has free electrons, is the idea here. And free electrons are in this molecule environment because the inventor, John Flanagan, in 1968, 1969, when he discovered the right formula to make this formula, managed to create a detergent compound that had all three electrical charges in it: negative, neutral, and positive. And you might wonder, well, what does a detergent or soap have an electrical charge about it? What's that mean? Well, if you look on any common dish detergent, ingredient list, you will often see that your common, let's see, what's some of the big brands or the famous brands that we have in our store? Joy, Tide, Dawn, right? Dish detergent. Well, if you look on their ingredients, you're going to see that they include anionic and ionic surfactants. And what's that describing is the ionic charge. And that charge is an electrical charge. So this, any detergent, and they've known this for hundreds of years really, has an electrical charge. And in soap making, master soap makers have known for centuries that 2 electrical charges in your soap makes a good cleaner. So negative, neutral, good cleaner. Neutral, negative, good cleaner. Neutral, positive, good cleaner. But the problem is getting all 3 charges into one molecule burned each other out. Bad cleaner. No cleaner. And this is the crux of what the breakthrough was in 1969, which is kind of an interesting year, that John Flanagan out there in Chicago solved. He solved how to get all 3 electrical charges into one molecule. And so it has this very unique property, which, as a result, I've made some very remarkable discoveries with how to use it and things that it can do, like freezing oil and water as a homogeneous substance. And, over the course of a very short period of time, that releases hydrogen, and that can be harvested. And then what's left it looked like ash, pure carbon as a very fine particulate. So I have a little jar here, and I'll let Paula come by, and I will demonstrate that I have some, spring water in a bottle, and I've been drinking it. Plain water. Now, it will be very, let's see, I'll try to turn it to that side. And if our camera can pick up from that distance the purity of the water there, okay? I have just some Sunoco Ultra Premium Motor Oil, 10W30. Here it is. And I'm going to pour some. It's much more impressive if I have like furniture crude oil. Sometimes people like to use crude oil with a steel wool, and that's how you kind of perk up your finish on some of your tables. That's really impressive because it's nice and black and nasty looking, and it is nasty. And but this is, since this is a very refined oil, it comes out kind of very golden and clear. So it looks kind of like oil and water for for a salad dressing. So are you picking up the separation of oil and water at all?
Yeah, I think I am.
Okay. You should be able to see a fine rind at the top of the water. Yes, that's good. All right, that's great. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this top back on the oil here. I'm going to shake the water a little bit, just to see if you can get real close to it. Get real close. Get right on it, as close as you can, because I want you to.
I can't get closer unless I move the camera closer.
All right. Well, that's pretty good. That's good. I'm going to give it again a little shake so you can see the globules. There you go. It looks great. No, this is perfect. I just want to see if I'm not moving in. All right, I'm moving out of the frame. I want to just want to make sure I'm still in the frame. Very good. All right. So you all can see that there is a separation between the oil, and I'll give it one more good little shake here, and you should be able to see the globules there. There you go. Okay, so imagine Valdez oil spill is something like that. It's the oil is on top of the water, and it floats because it has a lot of hydrogen in it. The hydrogen acts like little balloons, like little helium balloons that hold the carbon chain up off the water. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is take a little bit of this product here. I'll throw it right in front of there so you can see what it looks like. There it is. All right, and this is 98% water. The color that you see is a marker dye so that you can see it. It's colorless. It's fairly odorless unless you put a fragrance in it. And what I would like you to do is get right back on that close-up again, because I want everybody to see there's that golden yellow oil, and there's the clear water underneath it. And I'm going to put a little bit of our product in there, and let's watch the reaction. Okay, now I didn't put a whole lot in there, and I haven't stirred it. Okay, we're just looking at it. Very little bit of product. Now there's actually too much oil in there because it's a proportional thing. It takes apart as much oil. The more water, the better. All right, but for the purposes of this demonstration, I just want to show how it breaks the oil up. And now, in a greater volume of water to oil, like if I had just had a couple of drops of dark oil in here, it would be much, much more effective to see this transformation, because then this volume of water would be enough to actually absorb every molecule. But when you watch me shake the jar, okay, here we go. I'm just shaking it. Give it a little agitation. People have, actually. So there you have the oil being just sucked up by the water. It's like a sponge. The water is like a sponge, and it's pulling apart those hydrocarbon molecules. And given that this is a highly refined oil, and it's very clean and clear, it's a little harder to break down than if it was crude oil right out of the ground, but it still breaks down quite effectively and quite quickly. And I'm going to take my little remaining bit of water and just test the theory, see, because you can still see, if you get right on there, you should still see the rind of golden oil, brand new petroleum oil, from the bottle here. There's still a little rind at the top, but watch what happens when we simply add more water. And this is what's really remarkable, is the more water you add, the better it works.
So like water's an activator.
And, well, yes, the more water you have, the more room you have to pick up and pick apart those oil molecules. Okay, so that's the tabletop demonstration, and like I said, it's much more interesting and fascinating when you have really good crude oil or something nasty. Now, I've cleaned animals that had gotten into a variety of compounds, engine oil and stuff, and effectively cleaned their fur very, very quickly. And so when Valdez went down, we sent a crew up to Alaska in a big white van with a lot of product, and we went to the beaches, and Mike Donner was leading that crew. And when Mike got out to the beach and they started testing our product on the globules and waves of oil coming in, but it was really just a test attempt. In fairly short order, these heavily armed representatives from Exxon came up to them and chased them off the beach with automatic weapons in these sort of post-apocalyptic, uniforms, black uniforms, and said that we were not allowed to experiment or clean the beach because it was their spill and we had no right to do that. So the guys packed up and they found their ways over to the hippies cleaning animals with Dawn dish detergent over at Mars Cove at Valdez, and demonstrated how quickly we could clean the birds and the seals. And they threw us out. We scared them. They said nothing could clean crude oil off animals that quickly without gasoline in it.
Did you have pictures of what you did with the hippies, with the dog, European place?
I don't know. I don't know. This is going back almost 30 years now, I imagine. I was in contact with the head of the Coast Guard. I believe he was an admiral. And I told him what I had. I called him up there. I was in communication with the Coast Guard up there, who had special ships called skimmer ships that were getting gummed up because the crude oil, as the volatile ethers come off the crude oil on top of that cold water, it asphaltizes and it gets very sticky. It's like chewing gum, and it just sticks to all their equipment, and it would clog up the skimmers. So it was just a nightmare that would go from bad to worse. And he asked me, would my product work to break up the oil and in those conditions? And I said, well, yes, it works. It works better with heat, but it will work in cold water too. And he wanted it right away. And I get a phone call back some 10 hours later, and he said, and as best I can remember, he said, well, somebody way high up doesn't want this technology to get out. I'm not allowed to use your stuff, but boy, we sure could use it. And that began our journey of discovery of the vested interest in the toxic trade, the poison trade. And the poison trade unfolded like this. What we found out some 3 years after the Valdez spill is the Kodiak Islands that were very heavily impacted were a pristine wilderness area that was coincidentally also traditional hunting and fishing grounds of the Inuit and other indigenous populations of the area. Tribal land, tribal water, and also a declared pristine wilderness area, protected. It's also an area that is rich with mineral deposits such as petroleum under the water, on the seafloor, below the seafloor. What we found out is that the money that Exxon made, even after it didn't even ever pay all of its fines, and there are still people who haven't been compensated for the loss of their businesses as fishermen and such, made more money drilling off these islands, because what happened is that these islands, because of the spill, lost their status as pristine wilderness protected areas, and that opened it up for mining. And that's what happened. So they started mining offshore drilling because they effectively ruined the environment with a quote-unquote accident. We don't think it was an accident. We think it was deliberate, and the poor sea captain was the fall guy. How else I discovered the vested interest in the poison trade is the professional cleaner-uppers of oil spills. Make a fortune on oil spills with all of their absorbent pads and all of their skimmers and all of their buoys and booms and all these, labor-intensive, equipment-intensive, and fairly ineffective, time-wasting products and procedures, procedures again, that ultimately require yet another stage of, once you've sopped up the mess and once you've sort of spread it out and got it tucked into under the rocks and stuff, then you have the problem of disposal of the absorbents and whatever it is that you've picked up and skimmed up off the water. And that's a whole nother, shell game of cost and storage and so on and so forth. So my then partner in business, I had a restaurant with Carol, and her brother-in-law was having their 25th wedding anniversary with her sister. And so I was out on a boat off the coast of Connecticut, Long Island Sound, having a delightful conversation with a good friend of John's who was in the business of cleaning up oil spills. And I said, man, I got a great product for you. I got a product that will not only make the oil manageable, you can suck it up off the ocean, you can refine it, or you can just destroy it on the spot, depending on the formulation, because you can dial in the alkalinity of this product to any crude oil, and make all kinds of derivatives chemically instead of using heat in fracking towers. And I went on and on with my presentation. And he said, nope, stop right there. I don't want it. I said, what? Why? I think you'd welcome this product. I said, you're going to put us out of business. He said, we make money on the poison. We don't want it to disappear. And I was stunned. He said, it sounds like you got a good product, good luck, but this industry doesn't want it. We don't want to clean up the mess. We just want to move it around. And that's how we make a fortune on this stuff. And so the last thing that I found out, actually the trajectory of this journey I've been on is a little scumbled here. Before that event, I was living on the reservation up at Akwesasne, where I had mentioned the Mohawk environmental officer friend of mine, Ken Jock, was the one who really kind of exposed me to the information of trichloroethylene and PCBs being polychlorinated biphenyls being so abundant in the tissues and fat of turtles that they are considered toxic waste. He gave me a call one day, and he says, hey, that soap of yours, will it clean up oil underground in the water table? And I said, it should. I don't see why it wouldn't. And he says, well, go see Roger Bennett over at the Buddy's truck stop. And we've got a problem over there. And I said, okay. So I loaded up my van with a couple cases of product, and I drive up, and I get a hold of Roger, and Roger said, well, how'd you know about this? And I said, well, Ken Jock sent me. And he goes, oh, okay, great. So we talk about it, and he looks at me and he goes, well, I need a miracle. And he explains to me that in 30 years of operating the truck stop, the truckers were very much unregulated. Their fuel tanks were not like they are today. In fact, the saddle tanks may still be this way. I'm not sure. But over the 30 years of his operating a fueling station, which was a big one, the big tractor trailers come in and hundreds of cars could come through, and they serviced a lot of people in the North Country. What he explained to me is that the diesel fuel over these 30 years kept splashing over the tanks because the guys were sloppy. You know, the truckers would come in and they'd forget that the thing was pumping, and oh, it would splash over. But diesel fuel is rather cheap at those days. It was not something they were conscientious of like they are today. It's expensive, so you want to be precious with the stuff. It wasn't always like that. And he said that the diesel fuel got into the asphalt, and since asphalt is a petroleum product, it's crushed rock with oil, essentially crude oil, got under the parking lot and into the water table as a black ooze. And this black ooze migrated in what they call a plume underground. And that plume of groundwater with this black ooze contaminant got off the reservation and into the septic systems of non-native people off the reserve. And that's when the EPA got called in because the toilets backed up because the bacteria died in the septic tanks. And this became a cross-border, cross-boundary issue. It involved New York State, it involved Franklin County, it involved St. Lawrence County, it involved the reservation, and the reservation straddled the border with Canada. So it was international as well. And Roger had 3 test pits. They were 10-foot circular, 10-foot deep, and these test holes were to expose the groundwater, which it did, and you could see the black ooze gurgling up constantly, just covering the water. And he said, well, here it is. This is the problem. And I said, well, what's the solution? What's the game plan? And he said, well, the EPA wants me to dig up 3 football fields of area, the entire complex, basically, to a depth of 30 feet. All right, so try to work that out. 3 football fields, so that's 300 yards by 300 yards. 30 feet deep to the bedrock, and remove all of that contaminated soil and ship it to Albany and replace it with clean fill from somewhere else. The estimated cost was $30 million, $30 to $40 million, or $20 to $40 million, but let's say $30 million. He said, I need a miracle, or they'll shut me down. I said, okay. And it's always fun to watch this stuff just break the oil up. So I took a couple of gallons of my product and I poured it into the test hole, and Roger just got a stick and stirred it, and it blew the oil up, and it made the oil look like chocolate milk, all one homogeneous substance. And, no, and he's dead now. Yeah, this is going back to the early 90s. No, and what happened is, for the next 20 months, I just serviced those test holes until the black ooze disappeared. And they had, and in those 18 months, all of the septic systems came back online. The entire water table got charged. All of the hydrocarbons disappeared. The EPA came in, they did their tests and measurements, and they said, well, Roger, we don't know what you did. There's no hydrocarbons in the water. Everybody's happy. We don't know what you did. We don't want to know. And they packed up, the EPA left, and they never came back. So that's just a tidbit of some of my experiences with this product. And so we'll talk more about it.
And you heard it here on Woodstock TV.
And you heard it here on Woodstock TV. I'm going to turn the baton now over to Paula. And thank you for watching Conant Show, number 20.
Let's keep chatting while I set up
Sure.
the next shot, because you brought up so many interesting things. First of all, there was no video of